coming in. If you guys have questions throughout the meeting, you can type it into the chat box and we will have time to stop during the presentation to ask questions. And we will have 2 breaks through the presentation so you can get a drink or go to the bathroom or whatever you need to do. I will keep you on mute to avoid feedback issues, but I will unmute you or allow you to unmute yourself during the question time, okay? Let's see. Okay, we've got almost everyone, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And I'm just going to repeat for the new people that just came in. If you have questions throughout the presentation, you can type it in the chat, and I will take breaks to review your questions. And we will have 2 breaks through the presentation, okay? And I'm going to keep you on mute to avoid feedback issues. Okay, so if you're here, you probably received your letter of, or you received your award and your contract, and now you are ready for the next steps. So today is the post-award training to go over what you do now that you have won your award. So there's a common myth that a grant is something for nothing. You spend all this time writing a grant, you get approved, and you get the money, and you're done. But really, it is an agreement between 2 parties to complete a project with aligned mission and vision. And the real work begins after the award. That is why you sign a grant agreement with UTA that outlines your goals and the compliance you are agreeing to on your side. The FTA circular for 5310 is circular 9070.1G. And I'm not sure how they say that at the FTA. I'm probably saying it wrong, but that is the manual with all of the rules for managing the 5310 grants. But it's very difficult to read and not fun, so you don't have to read it. Instead, we train you on what information is in there and help you translate it, or translate it for you. So we at UTA are considered the pass-through entity of these funds. And as the pass-through entity, we translate the guides and circulars from the Federal Transit Administration into rules that you can understand. And it is our job to ensure your compliance with those rules. Holly Mahoney and I go to Washington, D.C. once a year to be trained on grant management and try to keep up with the federal changes. This year, there were some changes made in the uniform guidance, and we've taken trainings to understand those changes and try to help you understand them. UTA was designated by the governor of Utah to be the pass-through entity for these funds. And We oversee the award process and procurement and manage the funds, and our compliance depends on your compliance, so we care about your success. The objectives of this training are to help you understand the responsibilities and processes, the 5310 terms of participation, or kind of what's in your grant agreement is what's in this training also, and understand reporting requirements, risk assessment and audits, civil rights requirements, and the process of requesting funds if you were awarded operation funding and how you get that, okay? So topics we're going to cover is we're going to briefly go over Zoomgrants and how to add collaborators. Then we will talk about Zoomgrants reporting requirements and Zoomgrants operation reimbursement. We will talk about site visits and inspections of your vehicles, external audits, civil rights requirements, and briefly talk about budget and program a little bit. And we will touch on vehicle procurement, but this is not the vehicle management training, and I will talk more about that. And then we will talk about some resources and ways you can collaborate with other human service agencies throughout the Wasatch Front. So I have separated the training today into 3 categories of success because I want you all to be thinking about how do you evaluate a successful project overall? And these 3 things I've identified as the important or key aspects of a successful project. So the first section is accountability. The second part of the training will be on sustainability, and then last, collaboration. Each section will take about 30 minutes, maybe 45. So this intro and the Zoomgrants and adding collaborators, and then we will get into accountability section, have some question time, and then we will have a break. When we come back, we will do the sustainability section, another break, collaboration section, and then we will end with questions, and I will take attendance. So don't leave until we do attendance at the end so that you can get credit for being here, because we do have to, this training is mandatory by the FTA, and so we have to take attendance of who was here and send it or save it for the FTA to check this training. And I was having some issues with the video the other day, but I think I figured out how to fix it. So hopefully we will get that working. So things to remember in Zoomgrants about adding collaborators. I'm going to show you a video, but the top things to remember are you must be an application contact in order to add collaborators. You must assign permissions to your staff in order for them to go in and report or do an invoice. You must update the contact information if you have new employees so that we always have up-to-date contact information if we need to reach you. And if you have issues with Zoomgrants, call the Zoomgrants customer service or submit a ticket, and they can help you better with that kind of thing than I can, usually. Okay, so I've got to switch this to get the video to work. Okay, where's my... Okay, I'm going to start the video. If you don't have audio, please let me know in the chat message so I can retry the sharing, but it says that audio is on. This video is for the subrecipients of FTA 5310, Enhanced Transportation for Seniors and People with Disabilities within the 3 large urbanized areas of Utah. This video will show you how to add collaborators in your Zoomgrants account for application submission or management after you have been awarded funding. You can only add collaborators if you are the application contact. So if you are the application contact, this is what your screen will look like when you log in. You will have your incomplete applications submitted and approved. So I'm going to show you how to add a collaborator to an approved application. When you are working on an application, you can still add collaborators, but they can only help you with the application process. Once your application has been approved, you will have to go back in to change permissions or add more people that will be managing the grant award with you. So I'm going to click on this 2017 award, and then you'll scroll to the bottom. You're in the summary tab when you come in here, and it will have the name of your application contact that you should be logged in as. Then down here at the bottom is where you can add collaborators. First, you'll need to add their email address, first name, last name, and their title. Then you can give them different editing access. So when you're first applying and you add a collaborator, they will only have access to the application. Once your award has been approved, you can go back in here and give them reporting access or access to invoicing or submitting operations reimbursements is what it's called in our program. And then, like you can see here, this person was added as a collaborator, but they never accepted or logged in. So you can remind them to log in by clicking this, and it will send them an email. Down here, you'll also see additional contacts. Additional contacts are different than collaborators. They will get email notifications, but they cannot have any editing access. So this is just if you want someone to receive notifications. Maybe it's the CEO or someone important that wants to know what's going on, but they are not in charge of reporting or applying or anything like that. And that is how to add collaborators. Please remember you can always contact Zoomgrants if you have any questions or problems by clicking this help button in the upper right hand corner. Okay, and one other thing I wanted to show you, it's kind of blurry, but this is the screen that you see when you log in. So on your approved applications, you'll notice these buttons on the side say add invoice or add report. So if you want to do your invoice or reporting, that is a quick way to do it without having to go into the application and go to the tabs. And I will show you how to do that later. Okay. Now, okay, and now that we've talked about adding collaborators, we're going to go into the rest of the training. We're going to start with the accountability section. Accountability is an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility or to account for one's actions. Subrecipients and UTA are both accountable for the 5310 funds and how they are spent, what they are spent on, and it's up to us to work together on accountability and support each other. The first step in accountability is having clear, achievable goals. So think back to the goals that you made in your application. If you can't remember what they are, just try to think of some new ones. and maybe write them down. Brainstorm some measurable goals that you want to achieve throughout your project, and think about how you can measure or evaluate your progress and success through those goals and milestones. In your quarterly reports, we want you to refer back to your goals and describe what you've achieved. Talk about things your project did or setbacks that you've had. The more details, the better in the narrative, because the FTA has expressed that moving forward, they are going to start focusing on project success and how you're meeting goals rather than just looking at compliance, like if your reports were submitted on time. They want to know what was in those reports. Was progress made? Are funds being spent? And is this money making a difference or impact in this community? Okay, we're going to watch a video on quarterly reports, how to submit them. We will go over what questions are asked, who completes it, and when it is due. And instead of playing the whole video, I'm just going to kind of walk you through it so I don't have to switch back to audio. So this time I'm logged in as an administrator. So this screen will look different than when you log in. So the one I showed you previously with the orange buttons that say add invoice and accepted award, that's what you will see when you log in. But I will show you, this is what, if you don't want to just click the quarterly report button, you can come in and you have these tabs and you will click the quarterly report tab. And then you will see all your quarterly reports here, and a green check means that you submitted it. And the date here is the date that it's due by, and you will receive reminders leading up to that date. You'll fill out all the questions and then you'll click the submit quarterly report button. Sometimes it doesn't go through the first time and you have to click refresh. There's, instead of this button, I think there's a button that says refresh here instead of refreshing your browser. Make sure you click the refresh button and then look at it again. Sometimes you have to submit it twice. Or you'll also receive an email letting you know that it was successfully submitted. And the green check will also show you if it was submitted. So the questions that your quarterly report asks is first your grant type. And if you don't know your grant type, feel free to ask us and we can tell you. Is your project not started, in progress, or complete? Once your grant agreement has been executed by you and by UTA, you will receive a final signed copy from Holly Mahoney. And that final signed copy will have the date that the last person signed. And that means that the grant agreement was executed. On that date, your project has now started and you can start billing for operations. Up to that date, you may still be waiting for your contract to be signed, but you'll have quarterly reports due. So, or you're getting the reminders, So I would just come in here, click your grant type, click not started, and submit, and then you won't get those reminders. And it's good practice to get in the habit of submitting your quarterly reports. Then once your project has started, you'll have to answer more information. Number 3, this is the narrative we're going to talk about a lot today because we're kind of changing how that's done and the FTA is putting a lot more weight on this narrative. So not only do you describe how this project has impacted your services, but we want to know about your goals and your milestones, any important things that have happened, like if you had a civil rights complaint or if a vehicle is in the shop or any setbacks to your project. If you had any incidental trips, which we will talk about later, put in your narrative what they were for, what you're using the vehicles for. I know right now a lot of people due to COVID-19 are not running their regular programs, and maybe they're doing like a Meals on Wheels delivery service. So that's totally fine, but let us know in your narrative that that's what you're doing with the vehicles. And then you also need to report what the number of individuals served are and number of one-way trips. And we will talk about how those are defined and what the differences are, and I'll show you a drawing to try to explain that, and it can be confusing. And then trip purposes, you probably do all sorts of different trips. So if it's more than one, just click other and explain, and if you don't provide trips, you can click that. Okay. So let's talk about people served versus one-way trips. These numbers should never be the same number. Your people served are the number of clients your project served within that reporting year. Now, the FTA does not run on a calendar year, which is confusing. And in your guidebook, I wrote the dates of the annual quarter versus the FTA's version, or not, sorry, the annual reporting year, and then the quarterly reporting year for the FTA. So it's a little different. So after your third quarter report, that is when we submit our annual reports to FTA that include all of your numbers from your quarterly reports. So after your third quarterly report, you start counting your people served again. So let me give you an example. The fourth quarter, which is October through December. So we submit our annual reports in October, remember that. So October through December, let's say I have 10 clients, and I always have these 10 clients. They're the only people that my project serves. So I'm going to report 10 in my October through December quarterly report. Then the next quarter, let's say I didn't sign up any new clients. I still only have those 10 clients. So I'm going to report 0 people served because I did not add any new clients to that 10. Then the next quarter, maybe I added 5 new clients. So now I have 15 total clients. So I would put 5 on that report for that quarter. Then in quarter 3, when we run the annual report, we can see that you served 15 people during that year. And then you can start recounting again. And if you mess up, that's okay. We're just trying to get an idea of how many people your projects are serving. And if it's confusing, the guidebook explains it also, and you can always look back there to remember how that works. One-way trips. A one-way trip is defined as taking a person from point A to point B multiplied by the number of clients in that trip. So if you take 5 clients on one trip to the grocery store, that's 5 trips. And so I have this picture here to help you. So 5 clients leave location 1 in one bus and go somewhere to location 2. That's 5 one-way trips. Then all clients return to location 1. That's another 5 one-way trips. So that is a total of 10 one-way trips. Incidental trips are when you did something not serving a client, like running an errand, getting gas, taking the vehicle to the shop, delivering a meal. And we're not going to talk about RidePilot today, but some of you already are reporting in RidePilot. So just as a reminder, when you report an incidental trip in RidePilot, you do it the same way you do a regular trip, but you just put 0 in the people who are riding on that trip. And then in your narrative, be sure to explain what your incidental trips in that quarter were for. Please also, sorry, one more thing to note. Remember that if you have 3 awards that are open, you have 3 separate quarterly reports every quarter that you have to complete. You can't just do it all on one award in Zoomgrants. You have to do it per award. Okay, okay, so we're going to talk a little more about the quarterly report narrative. What other things can you put in your narrative? When you receive your vehicle, put the date that you picked it up. When you put your vehicle in service, maybe put that date in there. Any important dates that the FTA might want to know about, please include in that narrative. How your project is aligning with the strategies that are outlined in the local mobility plans that the LCCs make. And if you spent all your operations and you're done with them, put that in your report. If you were late or missed one, why? If you had an internal audit, how did it go? And maybe upload the results of that. So anything you think is important that the FTA might want to know about, please include in that narrative. Okay, so here are the calendar quarters and when your reports are due. So January through March, your report is due April 15th. So 15 days from the last day of the quarter. And these are also in your book, remember, so you can look back at them anytime. And remember, the FTA has different quarters. They run that the fourth quarter of the year is the first quarter of their year because they get all of the annual reports in October, and then the FTA shuts down for a couple weeks so that they can do all the reporting stuff that they do. And then fourth quarter is when they start taking, or we start counting over. Okay, sorry, that's so confusing. It's in your book if you want to copy or write that down. Okay, we're going to talk about operations invoicing now. What costs are covered? We're going to talk about compiling your backup documentation, creating an invoice, and receiving payment. You can receive payment by check or direct deposit now. So if you want to do direct deposit, send me an email and I have a form that you can fill out and then set up direct deposit. That way it's faster than waiting for a check. Okay. All right, so this video I am going to show, so let me switch over to video settings. No. No. This video is for the subrecipients of FTA 5310, Enhanced Transportation for Seniors and People with Disabilities, within the 3 large urbanized areas of Utah. This video will show you how to submit an invoice for vehicles or operations reimbursement. So right now I'm logged in as the application contact, but if you have been invited as a collaborator on an award and given access to reimbursements or invoicing, then you will be able to submit reimbursements. So first I'm going to go to my approved award that I'm submitting an operations reimbursement or vehicle invoice for. And then I'm going to click here where it says reimbursements. This tab will show me any past invoices that I have, what their status is, how much was paid, and all of that. And then down here, it will show me my remaining, if I have remaining funds from operations or vehicle here. So make sure your budget has been put in correctly so it shows how much you've been awarded for your vehicle and your operations and how much you have left.
Then I'm going to create a new invoice, and it will pop up this window here. Now, if I'm submitting one for a vehicle that I'm receiving, first I will get an invoice from UTA Accounting or Holly Mahoney, and it will say how much I need to pay for my local match. So I would subtract my local match from the total cost of the vehicle, and that is how much I would put for my vehicle invoice. So how much the federal award is paying me for my vehicle. And then I would put that in my request and submit it so that UTA can mark it as paid, and it will show on my budget that I already received that money for the vehicle, basically. If I'm submitting an invoice for operations reimbursement, then I will fill out more information. First, I'm going to tell you how to do your invoice number. So if I was doing a vehicle invoice, I would just write vehicle. But for operations, you want to put the abbreviation of your agency plus the last day of the reporting period or quarter you're billing for. So here I give an example, UTA 09/30/19. So if I was doing today, I do.
So there is a problem with the video and it's not showing what the invoice looks like. But you will put in the amount you're requesting, and then you can upload your backup documentation, which we will talk about. Yeah, the video didn't record my screen.
Who the drivers are, how many hours they worked, and how much they were paid. So you upload that. Then once I have all that uploaded, I click here, submit invoice. All of this stuff up here will be generated for you, so you don't need to worry about that. Then once it's submitted, you can refresh the page and it will show here. Sorry, let me try that again. And then you'll see your invoice here and it will say submitted. Then if I approve it, the status will change to approved and your payment will be sent out. If there's something wrong with it, I will send it back and there will be a note when you click on the invoice. There will be a note in here, usually around here, that says why it was 53.
Again, sorry, it's not showing the box that popped up, but you will see the invoice. Sorry about that. I'm gonna have to fix this video. Okay, we're gonna go back to the presentation, but if you have questions or you run into difficulties about adding an invoice, I can walk you through it, and I will fix this video and upload a new one when I can, and then I'll send it out to you guys. But this is my YouTube page where I upload training videos, and you can subscribe, and when a new video is uploaded, it will let you know. Okay, I see a lot of questions. Let's see, please clarify. Okay, so yes, the manual did say something different on page 6, and I sent out a new version of that yesterday. So I fixed that error. So if you did not receive that new copy, let me know and I can send it to you. But I think I sent it out to everyone. But I had a mistake on page 6 about the trips, and I corrected it in the new guide manual. So I apologize about that. And the naming convention, don't worry about it too much because I have the ability to edit it, but I'm going to give you an example. So let's see. Katie, you're from United Way of Salt Lake. So this is how I would do it is UWSL maybe. And then let's say the last day of your quarter was June 30th. So I would do 06/30/20. So that's United Way Salt Lake 06/30/20, if that makes sense. And if it's not correct, don't worry about it because I can edit it. Jay, yes, I can send you a manual, but I don't know your email address. So can you put it in the chat and I will make sure you get a copy? And Vicky asked, when you go in to enter your invoice, it does give you an example so you don't have to remember. Yes, Vicky, that is true. It gives you an example about how to write your naming convention for your operations invoice. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk a little more about the operations. UTA will reimburse subrecipients for 50% of the total expense incurred in your reporting period. So you have 50% is the federal award, 50% is local match, which your agency covers, and then that equals 100% of your total expenses. So when you're doing your invoice, you'll have your summary page on your backup documentation with all of your expenses listed, and you take that total expense and divide it in half, and then you request half of that amount for the federal match. And then the check or payment that we send you is that 50%. And it's reimbursement. So you have already spent those expenses for the quarter, and then we reimburse you for 50% of that. Okay. And I'm going to talk about the backup documentation, but there are good examples in the guide to show you how to create that if you've never done the backup documentation. But just remember that your backup documentation should contain a cover sheet that summarizes how much you are requesting and separates your expenses by category with the total amounts, federal, or the total amount at the bottom, federal amount, and local match amount, or something similar. Please include driver wages. You can show that with payroll with check numbers, or you can do an Excel spreadsheet as long as you include identifiable information like numbers and a check number. Most people have a payroll account or like a computer. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. It's on your computer and you can print a report. If you need help with that, Holly's really good at using, QuickBooks and all the programs, and she can help you figure out how to print your report. So if you need help with that, she's the most helpful with that stuff. If your payroll has more employees than drivers, so if it's a list of all of your employees, but you're only requesting for drivers, we need to be able to tell who those people are. So you can highlight them or circle them or something, just so that when accounting is looking over this backup documentation, they can see clearly who your drivers are and what you're asking for in your reimbursement. You must include any valid receipts or bank statements proving that you paid that amount, and please include eligible expenses only. some examples of covered expenses are driver wages and benefits, driver recruitment, background checks, fuel maintenance, or vehicle insurance. Also, you must have everything together in one PDF. If you upload like 4 different files, it makes it really hard for us to send that to accounting because they have to process it. And so we like to have it in one PDF so we can put the accounting cover sheet on there and just send it to accounting. And it's nice and easy for them to look at because they have to look at a lot of them. So we want it to be quick and easy for them. Okay, and I just want to read you something from the FTA circular. It states that volunteer driver programs are eligible and include support for costs associated with the administration, management, driver recruitment, safety, background checks, scheduling coordination with passengers, other related support functions, and insurance associated with volunteer programs. So that's how they explain what they cover. Okay, if you want to bill for something and you don't know if it fits under that definition or if it's covered, please ask us before you submit your invoice, and we can tell you either how you need to report that, because sometimes there's different things like if there was an Uber charge, there are specific requirements on how that has to be shown. So just ask us before submitting and we can show you how to do that. And the guide also goes over some of that stuff in more detail. All right, so we talked about quarterly reports. Now we're going to talk about things that are due annually. So every year, the FTA sends out a federal certificate and assurance form. We will send it to you with a reminder for everything that's due that year. You need to sign that one and return it by uploading it into Zoomgrants and then just sending me an email or something saying that you uploaded it, because Zoomgrants doesn't send me an alert. So that one needs to be signed and returned every year. The Federal Master Agreement is a federal agreement that applies to any and all contracts for federal grant funding. This is also released once a year with the federal certificate and assurances, but this one does not need to be signed, but you might want to save a copy or send it to whoever reads your contracts or looks at that kind of stuff. Other things that are due yearly. So when I send you the master agreement and certificate of assurance for the year, I will also ask or give you a reminder to upload your financial reports for the year. I know some of you work for cities or government entities, and you can submit a comprehensive annual financial report. If you have internal audits, you would want to also include that in your financial report. If you are doing internal audits, please make sure that your audits follow the generally accepted government auditing standards. And that is also called the Yellow Book, I believe. And it is issued by the Government Accountability Office of the United States. If you have a corrective action plan from an audit that you had, please also include that in your reports. Okay, closeout reports. Let's say you have spent all your operations funding and you only had operations, you didn't have any vehicles, so now your project's done. Send me an email. Oh, first step, actually, your last invoice for the last remaining operations, you will check a box saying, this is the last of my money, this is my last invoice. Then let me know. I will send you the closeout report. You fill it out with all the information about your project that the FTA needs, and then I will turn off your quarterly report reminders once I get that closeout report, and then you're done with your project. Now, if you have a vehicle, that's a little different. UTA is required to maintain continuous control of assets through the duration of their federal useful life. And in your guidebook, there is a chart that shows the different vehicles and their federal useful life. It's typically, I think, 4 years or 100,000 miles. Once your vehicle reaches its useful life, UTA will release the lien that we have on the title of the vehicle, and then you will get the title. So then it's your vehicle. But the FTA still paid for it. So the FTA has a right to $5,000 if the vehicle is worth more than $5,000 and you sell or dispose of it. So let's say you had the vehicle for 10 years. It's your vehicle at that point. UTA has released the title to you. But you decide that the vehicle, you're going to retire it and you're going to sell it at an auction. And let's say you sell the vehicle for $10,000. You have to let UTA know that you sold that vehicle for $10,000 and send us the information. And then $5,000 of that needs to be returned to the FTA. So there's more information about that in your guidebook, but just remember that even though you get the title for your vehicle, if you ever dispose of it, technically the FTA still paid for that vehicle and they have a right to some of that money to put back into paying for other vehicles. Okay. Also, if you have a vehicle only project, your grant agreement will have an end of project date. And once you meet that date, you don't have to do your quarterly reports anymore, and you can fill out the closeout report. But you do still have to use RidePilot up until your vehicle has met its federal useful life and we give you the title. Okay. Okay, so that ends the accountability section. We talked about reporting, your quarterly reports, and when that's due. Please make sure you submit your quarterly reports on time, and you're also submitting your operations requests on time. You can do operation requests quarterly, or if you're a big agency and you have a lot that you're getting reimbursed for, we suggest doing it monthly instead of quarterly. We have some agencies that do that because they're very big and they have a lot of operations costs, and their backup documentation would be like 100 pages if they only did it quarterly. So that is an option that you can do. But please make sure that you are submitting your operation reimbursements regularly. We've gotten in a little bit of trouble. We don't have a finding, but we've gotten in a little bit of trouble with the FTA at our last triennial audit because people have been waiting to the end of their grant and then asking for all the funds at the very end. And the FTA doesn't like that. They want to see that we're drawing down funds at least quarterly for each subrecipient. So try and be regular about that. What I would do is just set a reminder on my calendar that this date is the date that I complete my quarterly report and submit my invoice reimbursement. And you will get reminders for the report from Zoomgrants. Also note that your Title VI plan has to be updated every 3 years. You can just upload it to Zoomgrants and let us know. Everyone's on a different schedule for that, but we do check them and send them to Andrew Gray, who is our Title VI compliance officer, and he looks at them and makes sure that they are good. So every 3 years when you update your Title VI, just make sure that we have a copy of that. Okay. And we're going to watch a video about Title VI when we come back. Are there any more questions before we take our break? I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to unmute you. Sorry. So if you have questions, type them in the chat box. And if you don't, we can take a 5-minute break, get a drink, and come back. We will resume at 1:55. Okay? So I will see you then. Okay, so those of you that emailed me to get a copy of the grant guide, I sent that to you. So let me know if you don't get that. And we are going to go ahead and start with the rest of this. We are going to begin the sustainability section. Sustainability is important to your project and to us to maintain, avoid depletion of funds, complete a project successfully, and continue to get funding and keep your agency a low risk. And we will talk about that more. Federal grant recipients have primary responsibility. So sorry, let me rephrase that. Pass-through entities have a primary responsibility for monitoring all activities of you, the subrecipients. This means that we are responsible not only for our own grant spending, but also for the proper use of federal funds by the subrecipients. So federal awardees must ensure that the subrecipients comply with applicable federal admin requirements that we talked about, such as the uniform guidance. And so the first step in sustainability is that we are helping you detect, prevent, and deter findings and problems. Rebecca, can you shoot me an email and I will reply with a copy? Thank you. And so we have to prove that we are monitoring. So one of the ways we do that is site visits. We will perform a site visit every 2 years and a vehicle inspection. And these are the type of documents that we look at typically during our site visits. This year, we're working on trying to figure out how to do it a little differently. We're going to have to do desk reviews. So if some of you have had our grants in the past, just be aware that sometime in the next few months or so, you might receive a request for information from us so that we can do like a virtual site visit. And then we're also trying to figure out how to do no contact vehicle inspections. So I will give you more information when I know about that. The frequency of your site visits can be increased if you are higher risk. But for moderate risk agencies, it is typically every 2 years. So we will complete a risk assessment that we think of your agency, similar to the one you either filled out last year or when you applied. You did a self-assessment. So we will look at that self-assessment during our site visit and then make our own assessment of that. And you will either have a low risk or high risk based on that assessment. During a site visit, we also check your accounting systems, how you train your policies, and we may even pull aside some staff and ask them questions or look at equipment that was federally procured. After our site visit is complete, we will send you a formal letter with our findings or recommendations. And in this letter, we will identify the problems and communicate what recommendations or what we recommend you do. We will also include a time frame. Typically that is 30 days unless it's an urgent matter. Other items may require you to write a corrective action plan, and then UTA will hold you to that plan. Failure to address the recommendations within the given time will result in a change in your risk score, or further action may be taken to ensure safety and compliance. So let's talk about risk assessments for a minute. What is a risk? A risk may be a change in policy, a regulation, a new program, high turnover, if you have a large amount of funding with lack of sustainability. So let's say your program ran on a lot of federal funds, that is not sustainable because you should have diverse funding, inability to meet program goals or milestones, or maybe you have no experience managing grants. That could also lower your score, or sorry, not lower, increase your risk. The reason we have you fill out a risk assessment in the beginning is to help us get a feel of where you place yourself, and also help you identify your own risks and maybe any weak points that you should work on as an agency. So don't take risks. Turn in your reports on time, update any Zoomgrants changes to your staff and contact information so we can always contact you when we need to. Attend all of the local coordinated council meetings and trainings, and make sure you keep Zoomgrants up to date with any new documentation. Vehicle inspections. We will come inspect your vehicles every 2 years, but on the years that we don't inspect your vehicles, you are expected to do a self-inspection. You can use your own inspection sheets, or you can use ours that are on the website, as long as they are similar in the safety things that you're looking at and ensuring similar rules and aspects to that. And then you also have pre and post-trip inspection checklists. And we have copies of those on our website too, or you can also use your own, but we like to pull those out and look at them when we do a site visit to make sure they're being done. And I think I covered this later, but I just want to tell you that we are not going too much into vehicle management today, because some of you may have only operations or things like that. There will be a separate vehicle management only training, usually closer to when we know you're going to get your vehicles, and that will be for only people who are receiving a vehicle, okay? All right, let's talk about external audits for a minute. Outside of our site visits, as a subrecipient, you should be prepared to receive an external audit at any time. I know that's scary. Every 3 years, though, FTA does a triennial review of UTA, and we know that that's coming and we prepare for it, but sometimes they usually select 2 to 3 subrecipients to visit. They usually pick large agencies that are high risk and have a lot of federal funding, high risk or have a lot of federal funding. You don't have to be both. We typically will get about a 2-day heads up from them when they tell us who they've picked, and then we will let you know. When is the next triennial review? Let me think. We had ours in 2019. So 2022, I think. Yeah, I think 2022 is our next one, but I'll ask Holly and let you guys know. So yeah, they usually do give us a heads up of who they're going to go see and visit. But there are other audits where they could just drop in and not tell us, because they want to see how we're doing helping you be compliant, and they can't do that if they, just audit us. So you could get an audit from the Inspector General or the Government Accounting Office, I've heard, has been doing drop-in audits occasionally. We haven't had that happen personally yet to any of our subrecipients, but just know that that could happen. And then let's talk about the definition of findings versus recommendations. A finding from an audit is something where you're breaking the law, regulation, or an agreement policy. A recommendation is an area of concern where there is no compliance violation, but it could become a finding if you don't address it. Typically with external audits, if you do have a finding or recommendation, you will need to create a corrective action plan. So if you don't know what a corrective action plan is, or you've never done one, it's probably a good idea to just research that and how to write one and what it includes. I also suggest doing corrective action plans for your agency yourself or after an internal audit, just because it's good to have that written down and have goals for the year and goals to work on areas where you may be weak. Most common pitfalls that we see are not submitting quarterly reports on time or with enough information, not using Ride Pilot consistently, that is only for people receiving vehicles, not recording preventative maintenance in Ride Pilot correctly, not responding to written communication. That's why it's important to update Zoomgrants with your contact information. If you get a new employee, make sure that they understand their responsibilities to this grant and get training, and that new contact information is updated, because if we're not getting response to written communications, our next step would be to call you. And if that doesn't work, then we would send you letters. So that can affect your risk. So just try to be communicative and keep your contact information up to date. Title VI plan deficiencies, which we have gotten better at, especially this year with our application process. Not billing for operations regularly. Like I said, more and more auditors are looking at this, and UTA needs to be reimbursing your operations regularly, not all at once at the end of the grant. High turnover without training new employees on grant requirements, lack of written policies, or a lack of project goals and milestones to evaluate the success of your project. That's why it's important to have goals so that you can tell if you met them. And if we can't evaluate if your project was successful because we aren't sure how to measure your success, that will make it hard for the FTA to understand why your project is important, how it's making an impact in the community. Okay, civil rights. We're going to watch a video from the FTA on Title VI. Some of you who have done Title VI stuff in the past may have already seen this video, so go ahead and go grab a snack if you've already seen it, but it does have a lot of good information, and so we're gonna go ahead and show this. I have to switch my sharing again, so bear with me. Again, let me know in the chat if you cannot hear once the video starts to play.
State and local transit agencies receiving Federal Transit Administration funds are required to uphold Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, a landmark piece of civil rights legislation that outlaws discrimination on the basis of race, color, or national origin.
Title VI of the Civil Rights Act specifically states that any programs and activities receiving federal assistance cannot discriminate on the basis of race, color, or national origin. At FTA, one of our top priorities is making sure that public transportation service is provided to all in a non-discriminatory manner. To this end, it is essential for all FTA grantees to have a well-planned Title VI program in place to prevent discrimination, promote public inclusion, and have the means to address, avoid, and mitigate any discriminatory actions and activity. This may seem like a lot of work, but Title VI protections are essential in promoting and upholding a better America.
This video will describe FTA's Title VI requirements for a grantee's programs, policies, and activities. To ensure Title VI compliance, grantees should become familiar with FTA's Title VI Circular 4702.1b. 4702.1b clarifies and updates FTA's Title VI requirements and guidance. This video is a general overview tailored to assist FTA grantees and provide the public with a basic understanding of the Title VI requirements. More detailed information and other resources can be found on FTA's Title VI and Civil Rights Training Materials web pages. FTA grantees must comply with Title VI as a condition of receiving financial assistance from FTA. Regardless of how a grantee receives its federal funds, it still must satisfy the Title VI requirements. Most grantees receive funds directly from FTA and will submit their Title VI program plans directly to FTA. These are known as direct recipients. Some recipients are considered primary recipients because they pass federal funds to other agencies, known as subrecipients. As a subrecipient, you still have a responsibility to prepare and submit a plan. For example, if you receive federal funds only through a state, you would submit your Title VI program directly to the state. Grantees must submit their program plan to FTA by the posted due date to ensure it can be reviewed and concurred with before it expires. An expired status can hinder approval of FTA grants. Submission due dates are posted on the FTA website. Key to the grantee's Title VI program submission is ensuring it obtains its Board of Directors or similar decision-making body approval. Now let's talk about developing a program. A Title VI program will include a public notice, instructions to the public regarding how they can file a Title VI discrimination complaint with the agency, a list of any public transportation-related Title VI complaints, investigations, or lawsuits filed with the recipient since the time of the last submission, a public participation plan, a language access plan, and an equity analysis only if the grantee is required to, and has prepared one during the past 3 years for facilities or service and fare. Equity analyses will be discussed in detail in FTA's training video, Understanding How to Conduct a Service and Fare Change for Title VI Compliance. If a transit agency is applying for FTA funds for the first time, it will be required to provide information to supplement its Title VI program. First-time grantees are encouraged to contact their respective regional civil rights officer before developing a program. Title VI requires that recipients of federal funds notify the public of their rights against discrimination. At a minimum, information must be published on the grantee's website, as well as areas where the public may interact with the transit agency. Examples of this include displaying posters or providing pamphlets in reception areas, meeting rooms, or service areas such as transit stations, bus stops, or even inside transit vehicles. The notice should state that the agency operates programs without regard to race, color, or national origin, and include a description of the procedures that the public should follow to get more information on the grantee's Title VI obligations. The notice must also state procedures for the public to file a Title VI complaint. To ensure compliance with the handling of complaints, a grantee must develop a procedure for informing, accepting, investigating, and tracking any filed Title VI complaints. Title VI complaint forms must be available for the public's use, along with information on how to file a complaint. At a minimum, these should be available online. The next requirement is recording and reporting Title VI complaints, investigations, and lawsuits. This report must include the date of the complaint, investigation, or lawsuit, a summary of the allegation, status of it, and any actions taken. If the grantee is a primary recipient, it must also adopt procedures for tracking and investigating Title VI complaints that are filed against it. Subrecipients must also establish a formal complaint process, either by creating their own or by adopting portions of the primary recipient's procedures and policies. This can include the notice to the public informing them of their Title VI rights, procedures on how to file a Title VI complaint, and a Title VI complaint form. The subrecipient is still responsible for notifying passengers and other interested persons of their rights, and how an individual may file discrimination complaints directly with the subrecipient. Again, the subrecipient can adopt the primary recipient's complaint form and process. However, they are still responsible for its enforcement, monitoring, and overall management. The next requirement is to make the public aware of the grantee's Title VI responsibilities. A grantee is responsible for determining what public outreach measures are most effective based on a demographic analysis of the populations affected, the type of plan, program, and service under consideration, and the resources available. A public outreach plan or process must include procedures to provide adequate notice of public participation activities, as well as early and continuous opportunities for public review and comment. Some examples include scheduling meetings at times and locations that are convenient for constituents, or coordinating with community and faith-based organizations and educational institutions with relationships to minorities and LEP groups. Effective strategies for engaging minority and low-income populations and persons with limited English proficiency can be found in the FTA Circular 4703.1 Environmental Justice Policy Guidance for Federal Transit Administration recipients. Title VI prohibits discrimination by recipients of federal financial assistance on the basis of race, color, and national origin, including the denial of meaningful access for limited English proficient or LEP persons. LEP refers to persons for whom English is not their primary language and have a limited ability to read, write, speak, or understand English. A recipient's Title VI program must include a plan for providing language assistance to LEP persons, which is referred to as a Language Assistance Plan, or LAP. In order to establish a LAP, the recipient first conducts a four-factor analysis that examines the following. How many LEP persons are served? When evaluating this factor, grantees must look at how many and how do LEP persons interact with the recipient's agency? Who are these LEP communities? How many languages do they speak? This is needed to determine the appropriate language services for each group. What are the literacy skills of each LEP group in their native languages? This determines whether the translation of documents will be an effective practice. And lastly, are LEP persons underserved due to language barriers? The second factor to analyze is how often do LEP persons come into contact with transit programs. This includes surveying key program areas and assessing major points of contact with the public. The third factor is assessing what the LEP populations consider essential services, as well as the most effective means to provide language assistance to them. This can be done by holding facilitated meetings with LEP groups. Lastly, a grantee needs to manage resources and costs, consider technological advances, reasonable business practices, and sharing of language assistance materials and services between recipients, advocacy groups, LEP populations, and federal agencies. Grantees serving a significant number of LEP persons should ensure that their resource limitations are well substantiated before using this factor as a reason to limit language assistance. Grantees use the results for the four-factor analysis to determine which language assistance services are appropriate in order to develop its LAP. At a minimum, the LAP should contain the results of the four-factor analysis, including the description of the LEP population served, a description of how assistance services will be provided by language, communication methods to LEP persons about the availability of language assistance, how the plan is evaluated and updated, and how transit employees are trained to provide timely and reasonable language assistance to your LEP populations. A good starting point for LEP communities is to translate vital documents into the language of each frequently encountered LEP group. Failure to translate these vital documents could result in you denying an eligible LEP person access to services and would constitute discrimination on the basis of national origin. Non-vital documents can be translated orally. Once you understand who your LAP populations are and you have developed your LAP, you must apply it to your Title VI efforts, including public meetings, surveys, and other documents or interactions with the public where you may need to translate information into languages other than English. The Safe Harbor provision outlines the circumstances that can provide transit agencies a safe harbor regarding the translation of written materials for LEP populations. It stipulates that a grantee is in compliance if each eligible LEP language group has written translation of vital documents. Eligible LEP groups constitute 5% or 1,000 persons of the total population qualified to be served. Written translation of vital documents are not required if there are fewer than 50 persons in a language group. Written notices should be provided in the primary language of those with limited English proficiency about their right to receive competent oral interpretation of those written materials free of cost. These safe harbor provisions apply to the translation of written documents only. They do not affect the requirement to provide meaningful access to LEP individuals through competent oral interpreters where oral language services are needed and are reasonable. If a grantee has a transit-related, non-elected planning board, advisory council or committees, or a similar committee for which it selects its memberships, the grantee must do two things. 1. Provide FTA with a table depicting the racial breakdown of its committee membership. And 2. Provide FTA with a description of the efforts made to encourage the participation of minorities on such committees. Primary recipients must monitor subrecipients to ensure that they are carrying out their plans as documented. This is important because if a subrecipient is not in compliance, then neither is the primary recipient. The primary recipient need to document their process to ensure that all subrecipients are complying with reporting requirements. If the subrecipient is a fixed route transit provider, it also has to satisfy the corresponding requirements for fixed route transit operators. A primary recipient is required to establish a schedule to collect and review its subrecipient's Title VI programs. If a subrecipient is also a direct recipient to FTA, then the primary recipient is no longer responsible for monitoring the compliance of that subrecipient. This understanding must be formalized in an agreement. There are certain responsibilities to be mindful of when a primary recipient provides assistance to its subrecipients. If a grantee passes through funds to a subrecipient, the primary recipient must describe its process to ensure subrecipient compliance with Title VI and develop a schedule for collection and review of subrecipient Title VI program submissions. Other ways a primary can assist subrecipients in their compliance is by providing information, such as travel patterns and survey results for the subrecipient's service area, which is needed in developing their Title VI program. For example, a primary recipient may share a common service area with a subrecipient. In this case, the primary may offer the subrecipient data it has on travel patterns or its experience in conducting surveys. It is up to the subrecipient to decide how useful such assistance will be. But recipients like MPOs, states, and larger transit agencies generally know how to prepare and make this type of information readily available to its subrecipients and aid in compliance with Title VI. When a grantee is planning to site a facility, it has to conduct a Title VI equity analysis to ensure that the site location was not determined with regards to race, color, or national origin. Examples of facilities include operation centers and storage and maintenance facilities. They do not include bus stations, transit stations, or power substations, as these are evaluated during project development and the NEPA process. This equity analysis must occur during the planning stage before the selection of the preferred site, and must compare the equity impacts of various site alternatives, and must notice and conduct outreach to potentially impacted populations. Attention should be paid to other facilities in the preferred area, as there may be cumulative adverse impacts if any additional facility is built. To ensure proper perspective is used in the analysis, grantees should utilize the census tract or block group data. If the grantee determines that the location will result in a disparate impact on the basis of race, color, or national origin, it may only locate the facility there if there is substantially legitimate justification to do so, and it has analyzed the alternatives and found that there are no other locations that will have a less disparate impact. Civil rights compliance is central to the FTA's mission, and as a grantee, it is a condition of financial assistance. The revised Title VI circular and other training opportunities can be found on FTA's Civil Rights website.
Okay, so just some things to note. Okay, so none of you are fixed route, so you don't need to worry about that. And you don't ever have to worry about the equity analysis she was talking about unless we're doing a construction project, which we've done a couple times, but then UTA usually does the equity analysis for the subrecipient. She did talk about that you can use our complaint forms and complaint process. And we have examples of notice to public forms that you can use on our website, which I will show you later. And the safe harbor language in Utah is Spanish. So we have complete forms in Spanish also. You should have already turned in your notice to the public in your application, but if not, make sure that you have your designated person to take complaints, that you put their contact information on the poster, and then also you have to include our Title VI and ADA compliance officers information on that as well. We are currently working with our Title VI and ADA officer to develop a sticker that we can give you to put in the vehicle. It's been taking a while because they're trying to figure out how to fit all of the required information onto a small sticker and make one in Spanish, so then we have to translate it. So if we get those, I will share them with you. But also remember ADA compliance also, and you have your DBE plan and your EEO programs that you sent in with your application. So we won't go too far into those, but for ADA, we have you do your checklist at your application, and also include the ADA information on your complaint posters, because you can have an ADA complaint or a Title VI complaint, and they need to know how to file those if they want. Okay, and we watched the video. Okay, so I'm going to quickly show you your budget tab and what that looks like in Zoomgrants so you can get a feel for it. If you're new to Zoomgrants, you should have already put in your budget at your application for what you were requesting. But then once you are awarded, I go back in and put your awarded amount in this box called contract budget right here. And this is your local matching funds. So typically you'll put how much your local matches and where it's coming from. And then I will copy that over to your contract budget. And then for your expenses, you have different line items. And total project cost, federal funds is the amount you're requesting, and your local matching funds. Please ignore these percentages. They are wrong. and we've told Zoomgrants, but they haven't fixed it, and I don't know why it's so wrong. So just ignore those. So then I come back in and I put in what your contract budget is. So for example, this person requested a replacement minivan, and the total cost is $32,000. They're requesting this much to cover their van, and they're going to pay this much in their local match. They were awarded that van in full, so their contract budget matches their federal asking amount. Sometimes you may be awarded less than you requested, so the contract budget number is what you were actually awarded. Okay. And then this is in your reimbursements or invoice tab. It can be named different things, but I think for most of you it says reimbursement. These are your line items, and it will show you if your invoice was approved, paid, and your remaining balance. And then down here is the funding source. So this tells us what grant that money is coming out of, your total awarded amount, and then anything that's been approved, paid, and what's available. So that just gets you a little familiar with that. And if you have questions, you can ask us. Program funding. So because we're talking about sustainability, we want you to be aware that diversifying your funding is important, and you should have different avenues of money, not just the federal grant to pay for things. Because if you think about in the future, our programs every year or every 2 years that we do the application, it's getting more and more competitive. So we are seeing people who are used to requesting a large amount in operations and are used to receiving that full amount of operations getting less than they expected, and that can hurt your project. So make sure you're planning for a long-term project life with diverse funding, so that in the future, if you do get less money than you requested, because it's getting more competitive, that you are prepared, and that will help you be a low risk. And it's also good to have a disaster plan, especially now with the pandemic. Having a plan for backup is great to help people. Let me see. And don't apply for more grants than you can manage. Again, that goes back to internal audits. They can help you assess if you are capable of taking on more grants or not, or where your weaknesses are and what your risk is. Okay, so if you were awarded a vehicle, this is the upcoming process that you can expect to getting your vehicle. So first we will have a pre-order meeting, and we will contact you when we're setting those up, which should be soon. You will fill out an order form and then come to the pre-order meeting with your order form, and we sit down and meet with the vendor, who is typically Lewis Bus, and we go over your order together. Then the order is placed by our procurement specialist, and the vendor will give us a timeline on how long it will take and when your vehicle will be ready. Please be aware that with COVID and hurricanes, we've had shutdowns, and that can set back dealerships from being able to get the parts, because I can't remember why, but FTA vehicles have to be built. They can't be ordered from an existing lot. I think it has something to do with the Buy America standards. I'm not sure. But that's when I mean disaster planning. it's good to think about if you're getting a lot of federal grants and most of your projects rely on federal grants, federal grant money can take a long time. Sometimes vehicles get postponed or things happen and things get pushed back. We had one year where the government was closed down for a bit, and so we couldn't really do anything for a while. So just be aware of that. When you work with federal grants, sometimes things take longer. So then step 2 in the vehicle procurement procedure is training. That's when I will tell everyone receiving a vehicle that we will have a vehicle management training like this, and we will go over everything that comes with your vehicle on how to manage it, how to report. In Ride Pilot, Clint Wilkinson is our Ride Pilot specialist, and he can do one-on-one trainings with you on how to report things in Ride Pilot. Ride Pilot is a software that we use to track trips, people served, preventative maintenance, and details on your vehicle. Okay, and then after you've completed your training, then we have a pre-delivery meeting. That's when your vehicle is ready. The vendor brought it to us. We did an inspection of it and it meets our requirements, and we accepted the vehicle from the vendor. Now it's sitting in our parking lot. So we meet with you. This is a new process that we're doing because in the past we've had issues with the vendor getting the license plates for us and messing it up. Either they don't get the handicap plate that was requested, or there's just information that was put down wrong on a form, so then we have to start all over with the title and it can just become a mess. So we're trying this new process to see if we can streamline that. You'll come to our office, we give you the keys to your vehicle and the DMV registration paperwork. Then we'll have you look over it with us, make sure everything is correct. You take that paperwork to the DMV and get your license plates directly from them yourself. That way we make sure that they are correct and you can leave the lot with your license plates, okay? So then the next step is Riverside is where we keep the vehicles. You'll come to Riverside, we'll meet you there. We do usually a check sheet to make sure that everything is correct in your vehicle and you have a first aid kit and you have all the seats that you ordered, that kind of stuff. And that you have the keys that you need. And then we keep a copy of the key also in our office. So if you ever have an emergency or lock the key in the car, or if we need to take the vehicle for some reason, we have a copy of the key, just so you know. And then, so we go through the checklist, we take a picture of the vehicle, and then we also give you a checklist of things you can do now that you have your vehicle to get it ready, such as make sure that you have your Title VI stuff in there, make sure that you have a clipboard with accident forms and a pen available to your driver, make sure you have up-to-date insurance cards in there, that kind of stuff. Then you can place the vehicle in service and put the date you placed the vehicle in service on Ride Pilot. Okay, so that is the vehicle procurement procedure looking forward if you were awarded a vehicle. And that finishes our sustainability section. We talked about the importance of income diversity, being prepared for audits, and what disaster plans are and why they are important, providing your own evaluation of project outcomes and goals, how to identify risk within your agency, the importance of attending trainings, being compliant with civil rights, risk assessments, and, just be sure that you are giving us any documents that are updated. And we also like to have communications in writing, like emails, so that the FTA, if we're ever audited and they want to know, did you tell this subrecipient that they weren't in compliance? Did they send you a corrective action plan? That kind of stuff. We have that stuff in writing. So documenting is really important. Saving your pre and post trip inspection sheets and having written policies are very important. So just make sure you have all of that. And we can take another 5-minute break. It is 2:40 right now, so let's come back at 2:45, and then we will watch another FTA required video that's kind of long, and then we'll go into resources and stuff. I'll show you our website and things like that where you can get important information, okay? So I will see you at 2:45. Thank you. Okay, I hope you're all still awake. This is the last section, so maybe we can get done early. Collaboration. Collaboration is a working practice where individuals work together to a common purpose to achieve business benefit or to achieve a goal, which is why we are here today. We collaborate together to try and fix gaps in transportation for people who need it throughout the Wasatch Front. So first, one of the ways that FTA wants us to collaborate with anybody who provides trips or transportation, anyone who's on the road, we are required to show this human trafficking video. And we highly recommend that you show it to your drivers also. And I'm going to have to switch to video mode, so just give me a second.
We're at the bus stop that I was picked up by my trafficker at. We're in the spot it happened. Just where my life was pretty much turned upside down just by getting in somebody's car. Human trafficking happens all around us. We don't even notice it. It's happening at this bus stop. I think about that girls are being dropped off and picked up here all the time, and if I don't make a difference now, who will? If we don't take the responsibility on ourselves, then who are we expecting to do it? For me, if somebody said they cared about me, it would have been enough. This was the bus I was supposed to get on, actually. This exact one. The 201A. This one goes all the way up to my aunt and uncle's house. Girls who were trying to leave their family and were hungry and alone, and he didn't care, what race they were. He didn't care about any of that kind of stuff. For him, it was just money. It was just money.
Sometimes in order to understand this crime, we have to dispel some of the myths around it. And human trafficking carries with it a lot of myths, because when we talk about slavery, people think, what? That ended with the Civil War. But that is simply not true. There are more slaves today in our world than there were at any other time. And that includes the 400 years of the transatlantic slave trade. Human trafficking is the second largest criminal activity in the world. It recently surpassed arms trafficking. It is second only to drug trafficking, because Guess what? The traffickers, the gangs, the organized crime, they have figured out where you can sell a drug or a weapon only one time. You can sell a man or a woman or a boy or a girl over and over and over again.
Human trafficking is the exploitation of human beings for either the purposes of commercial sex or forced labor, and the trafficker uses force, fraud, or coercion to actually make money off of that person's back. Human trafficking is modern-day slavery, and these victims find themselves in situations that they literally cannot get out of.
Force might be physical threats to that person or maybe their family. Coercion, they may be threatened with some sort of, let's say, deportation, or perhaps even legal threats where they'll tell a woman, you must continue to prostitute for me, you must continue to go out there and earn me money, otherwise I'm going to call ACS and have them take your baby away because you're a prostitute. The fraud, of course, we deal with a lot, especially with teenagers. They're promised a job. They're promised some sort of romantic interest. They're promised a completely new life or escape or shelter. They don't realize what they're walking into.
The day that I met my trafficker was, it was March 10th or 9th. March 9th in 2014. I was going back to my aunt and uncle's house to sleep for the night, and then the next day I was leaving. I was getting on a Greyhound bus to go to Ohio. She asked me if I wanted to come party, and I remember looking them up and down, and he looked like he was really young. He was smiling, and he was wearing semi-nice clothes, but definitely not what you think of as like typical pimp clothes. She looked like she was younger than me. I thought if she was younger than me and she was safe, then it's probably an okay person. I told them about my Greyhound bus, and they said, well, how are you getting to the Greyhound bus? And I said, I have to take 4 local buses starting at 7 o'clock in the morning to get to this Greyhound station at 1. He said, well, why don't we just go pick up your stuff from your house? You can come here, you can sleep for a couple of hours, and then we'll drive you there. And this sounded really, really nice. And when I woke up, he was gone. He was gone from the house, and she was there. And I started to freak out. He walked in 4 minutes before the Greyhound bus was supposed to leave. And I picked up my stuff, and we drove down the road. At 1:30, I was just like, stop, we missed the bus. I was really trying to figure out what I was gonna do. And he's telling me this spiel about, oh, we'll get you nice clothes, we'll feed you, you can stay here, but you need to work with us for just 2 weeks, so we'll give you $500 to leave with. I knew what he was talking about. I knew that he was talking about prostitution. So that night, I was trafficked for the first time. It was March 10th, 2014.
My grandmother was a cop. She relayed one story to me, and that was that she had to go into a bar and speak to a pimp for about a half hour. And what was supposed to be a 30-minute conversation wound up being a 2-hour conversation. And she revealed to me that she had to keep reminding herself, I have a husband and children at home, because this man is telling me everything I have ever wanted to hear and never knew I wanted to hear. He was a consummate salesman. And that sort of combination, salesmanship or the ability to reach people without having any empathy for them whatsoever, I think sums them up very, very well.
Every trafficker is going to have their own rules because they're their own person, and they're going to have their own specific victim that they're working with. And I think it's just like every other type of reality in life. It's not all black and white. It comes in a lot of grays. Once the 2 weeks had ended, I did ask him if I could leave. he said, well, your family hasn't even called about you. They clearly don't really care about you. We care about you. How do you know this friend in Ohio cares about you? And so he manipulated me and to staying longer. When the manipulation stopped working, he got physical.
So force is anything that you can imagine when that word comes into your head, right? It's the beatings, the burnings, the rape, the gang rape. Victims have been shot, they've been knifed, they've been mutilated and tortured in absolutely horrendous ways. I mean, anything that that trafficker can think of to make that victim comply and obey the trafficker, that's what he or she will do.
By the time the last 2 months I was there, I was getting beaten every 3 hours or so. He waterboarded me, he pistol whipped me, he played Russian roulette with me, he electrocuted me, he burned me with clothing irons, he beat me with metal poles. He actually lacerated like 2 of my organs that way. So he was very violent, and the fear of dying kept growing as the beatings got worse and worse, to the point where I just thought that was the way I was gonna die.
Right now, I just want to bring to the stage from Truckers Against Trafficking. I'll make sure I said that without messing it up. Candace Paris, folks. Let's give her a big welcome.
I'm just going to put this stationary. Well, good morning. It is a privilege to be here with you this morning. Thanks, Greg. To talk to you, yes, indeed, about the realities of human trafficking, specifically a focus on domestic sex trafficking, and really how you as a school bus driver can play an integral role in recognizing and reporting this heinous crime. As Greg said, I'm Candace Paris. I'm the Executive Director of Truckers Against Trafficking. And Truckers Against Trafficking, or TAT for short, as we like to call it, has been working with the trucking industry since 2009 on this issue. And truckers are proving time and time again that they are the eyes and ears of our nation's highways, as their efforts have led to many victims of human trafficking being identified and recovered by law enforcement. But now at TAT, we have decided we need to be approaching the bus industry as well. Because think about it, professional bus drivers, whether passenger or school, dispatch workers, terminal employees, maintenance operators, those folks also, you folks, are also on the front lines.
He would take us here every morning after we got off of work. He would usually have Karaya run in there, look around, and then if she saw a girl that she thought was a good target, I guess, for lack of better terms, then he would park the car and come in and talk to her. And sometimes he talked to her for hours. And sometimes I would get in the car and come home with us. And he was just looking for vulnerable girls that were down on their luck and really were lost, just like I was. And so he would come here to find them. He said it was a perfect place.
When we think about how many passengers actually take buses, I mean, it's hundreds of millions of passenger trips annually here in the United States. Think about all of those points of intersection the bus industry actually has with potential victims. You may find yourself in a position where you are able to actually have a conversation with a potential victim, and they open up to you a little bit, and you starting to hear some things that don't add up.
I had a boy that was learning disabled, and he basically missed a transfer bus, and he wound up in my office. And a woman kept calling, identifying herself as his aunt. The aunt had explained that this young man's mother was a crack addict and unable to take care of him, and that she had arranged for his transportation using a bus service from Georgia up to New York. I called up the local sheriff's department down in Georgia to make contact with anyone who knew who the legal guardian was of this boy. I wound up speaking to a port employee who happened to know the family, knew the mother very well, gave me the telephone number. I spoke to the mother directly, and she was clear as a bell, obviously not an addict. Her son had been missing for 2 days, and she explained that her son was learning disabled and had been approached by this person online who was trying to get him to come up to New York. It turns out that this woman was not an aunt, that she was working for a pimp who was running we'll call it a brothel, that again specialized in underage boys and underage men. A bus employee thought that they were doing the right thing, that they were helping a kid out. The problem is the bad guys will always take advantage of our sympathies. They're always going to tell us a story to get what they want. They will lie, they will cheat, sometimes they will kill to get what they want, and what they want are these kids.
Trafficking happens on all forms of transportation. Airplanes, cross-country buses to local buses. I've seen it in both forms on a Greyhound that was coming from Los Angeles to Sacramento, and I've seen it on the local buses. And usually the perpetrator is watching from the distance, not really interacting with the victim when they're on the buses together. But sometimes they'll send the girls by themselves, and they're expected to make a certain amount of money before they can come home, wherever that might be.
You know, this crime really is hidden in plain sight. She may not be handcuffed, most likely won't be. But if her story doesn't add up, or if he is under the control of somebody else, and something in your gut is telling you it's not right, something is not right, you can make a call on behalf of that child. You can make a call on behalf of that adult.
Not long ago, a New York law enforcement officer was called to the scene by a bus driver who said that he saw two young girls that he thought, you know what, they're in a restricted area of a bus terminal, something is not quite right. Both of these girls have also offered at least one driver sex in exchange for a free ride to Pennsylvania. The officer takes them back to his office. He gets the grandmother on the phone. The grandmother starts begging for mercy for her two granddaughters. One who was 19 years old and had a severe learning disability, and the other who's 18 years old and just turned 18 a month ago. They had been living in a house and really a front for an underage brothel in Pennsylvania. The older girl was in a, what she thought, honest to goodness romantic relationship with the pimp. And his mother was the one that ran the brothel. Until they brought up a 15-year-old girl from South America. And guess what? The pimp starts sleeping with the 15-year-old girl. So this 19-year-old is so shocked and she begins to complain. So the mother of the pimp throws both of the girls out of their house so they can learn their place. And in the process, she steals their stuff. And the mother says, well, you can get your stuff back for $400. And here are the sexual services that you can provide in order to earn that $400. So the New York law enforcement officer takes those two girls, he puts them on a bus back home to their grandma. They arrest the mother and the son. They recover the underage victims as well as some of the adult victims who were being forced to work in that brothel, all because a bus driver decided not to just keep on walking, but he took a second look and made a huge difference.
It's not as if we have stringent security for who's coming on a bus or who's coming on a train. Sometimes if they have an adult put them on a bus, that's enough. Nobody really asks any question. But nobody's really asking, who's the adult that's putting this kid on a bus? Or sometimes, who is this adult that's picking this kid up off the bus? Or is there an adult that's picking this kid up off the bus? Now, some bus companies have stricter regulations, but a lot don't. A lot don't.
You know what's normal. You know what normal behavior looks like on your bus. What if two people come up and one is not allowed to speak freely? The other one does all the talking, most likely older than the individual not allowed to speak. The individual not allowed to speak doesn't have an ID on them because most likely the trafficker is holding it for them. There's a fearful demeanor, most likely. This person is just uncomfortable being with this other individual. Do you actually see any outward signs of bruising? Traffickers won't necessarily always be sitting by their victims. It could be behind them, it could be to the side, somewhere else in the bus, and yet they're obsessively watching them. They're controlling that person through bodily cues. What if you work in a terminal and you notice day in and day out, or even weekly, right, that there's a car that comes and the person that comes and is kind of strolls the terminal never really gets on to ride a bus, but instead that individual is always approaching young girls that look a little out of place, girls that look potentially vulnerable. And this individual is always coming up and talking to the girls. And even at times, he's gotten the girls to come with him. And so paying attention for those signs of pimp control is absolutely key if you're a terminal employee.
It's always struck me as odd, as a bus might take 3 days to get from some state out west to come into New York City. And so a kid has been riding a bus for 3 days, sometimes in the middle of the school week by themselves. The same bus driver, or maybe there was a switch off and there were 2 bus drivers handling this, and nobody thought to ask a question: why is this kid traveling by themselves in the middle of the school week? Why is this kid carrying everything they own in a backpack or a plastic garbage bag, and traveling from some small town out west all the way to New York City? This should strike a chord with people. This is a very obvious sign that something's potentially wrong.
If you're in a position to actually have a conversation, whether it's cross-country or inner-city bus, ask them, do they know who's picking them up? Are they familiar with the person who put them on the bus?
Jeffco is made up of 86,500 students, and we transport pretty much a third of those students, so it can fluctuate one year to the other. Last year, we were right around 32,000 students that we transport every day. With a topic like this is about student safety. This is about, students, who you pick up and you drop off at where their location is every day, their safety. And it goes beyond the bus now. It goes to the point of they're walking away, and you're watching which cars they're going to and making that difference. So for me, it's taking that extra second. Do we have to add more time to our routes? So be it, if it's gonna save a student from being in a situation that's unfavorable for them.
Keep your eyes open. If this is just in the back of your mind saying, where is this kid going and is this kid safe? Just take it upon yourself to be a hero in your head for 1 second. Just to look out for this kid for 1 second.
Half of America's school children ride the bus daily. I mean, you as a school bus driver interact with these kids on a continual basis. What if a child begins to have frequent absences? Before, they were always on the school bus and go into school. What about if that child appears malnourished or unkempt and disheveled? And before, this kid came clean clothes, hair was brushed, those kinds of things. Or you start to notice major changes in their behavior, uncontrollable anger, or maybe it's uncontrollable crying. There's all sorts of emotional highs and lows, and you're knowing something's just not right with this kid. Or maybe the kid is showing up with all of the latest gadgets, right? Or their nails done, or the hair done. I mean, sometimes the pimps will groom their victims, and in doing so, they shower them with affection and attention and purchased items in order to earn that person's trust and affection.
I wanted this presentation to really touch my folks to say, hey, I need to take that extra second now to pay attention to my kiddos on this bus versus, all right, it's my kid on the bus, hey, on and off. Yeah, come on, let's take that extra step to look.
School is often one of the last places that these victims are seen before they disappear entirely. They may have already run away from home, but they're still showing up to school. You do not want to talk to this kid and say, are you a victim of human trafficking? They will look at you sideways. They have probably never even heard of the term. But if you say something like, is anybody making you do something you're uncomfortable with? Are you being threatened in any way? Is your family being threatened? And when you're talking to that kid, get to know them a little bit. I know the bus ride is not that long, but maybe they can sit behind you. Maybe you can engage them in conversation. Maybe they just know there's a friendly face out there, an adult in their life who actually cares. Ask them, sure you're all right. Anybody making you do anything you're uncomfortable with?
I just want you to know I'm here for you. That makes such a difference when they're actually treated as a human being.
If I was a bus stop employee, I would call the police and I would maybe try and stop her and say something like, "You just want to make sure everything's all right," or something like that. Something along those lines to make sure that girl knows that she is being watched over. Some girls, just like me, I didn't feel like I was cared for by anyone. So hearing that from anyone would have been enough for me.
What we found with Truckers Against Trafficking is that it's amazing what an impact that a small group of dedicated individuals can have when they actually understand the issue that they're looking at. They understand the crime of human trafficking, and then they care enough to get involved. And so now we have hundreds of thousands of truck drivers and truck stop employees, right, who get this crime and who are actively looking for it. And so instead of being passive as they were before because they didn't understand the crime, they are now becoming a disruptive force along our nation's highways. They are recognizing the crime of human trafficking, and they are immediately placing calls to local law enforcement and to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And as a result, lives are being saved.
We depend on the public to alert us to this, that the public has to come up to us, the public has to take an interest in other people's kids, other kids in danger. We constantly depend on drivers and dispatchers, traffic agents, control agents, to alert us to this. And they're being educated, as far as I know, on a national level about what human trafficking is and the sort of mass exploitation that's going on. The sort of thing that we would turn a blind eye to, we can't afford to anymore.
If you're seeing a crime in progress, call 911. But then we're asking you after that 911 call, or if you're not sure if you're really seeing human trafficking, call the National Human Trafficking Hotline. You will be talking to staff 24/7 that are trained on the crime of human trafficking and can help answer any questions you might have so that you are able to ascertain if indeed you are looking at a human trafficking situation.
There's a particular employee that works for a very large bus company who routinely calls me about teenage girls that appear to be in distress. And can you come here? I got something. I'm really worried about this girl. I can't tell the amount of times that I've dealt with her personally regarding missing kids, and also kids that are being trafficked, that kids that are either on their way towards being indoctrinated in the life, or they're trying to get away from the life, or they're in transport for a particular event. I just became someone that she could call on whenever she saw something. And the more she got involved in this, the more she made that phone call, the more attuned she became towards what to look for.
So when you partner with Busing on the Lookout, basically we are asking you to train your employees. Every single bus driver and terminal employee, watch this training DVD and then go over the signs to look for that are accompanying on this bus wallet card, this Busing on the Lookout bottle wallet card. You know, when you open the card up, it has the red flag indicators, it's got the questions to ask, and you also have the actionable information law enforcement needs to open an investigation. And the great part about this wallet card is it means you always have the national hotline number handy and you can make the call.
You know, for me, what we're going to do at this point is, you know, the brochure and the information that you have, we're going to put these on each one of our buses. So now we have that number readily available for our drivers. So instead of me trying to find it, it's right here on their dashboard that they can reach out and start doing that thing and say, hey, okay, this looks kind of weird. So I'm going to hit that number and kind of go forward and do so.
It is okay to be wrong. You can remain, when you call the hotline, you remain anonymous and confidential. No harm done. But what if you're right? What if you're right? Isn't it worth a phone call to find out?
I had 12 surgeries. I had 28 broken bones. One in my skull, three in my back, 3 in the vertebrae in my neck, 4 in my jaw, 18 in my ribs, lacerations to my liver, my kidney, and my spleen. I was internally bleeding from my spleen. I had 1/3 of my blood because of all the beatings and blood that I lost. I had gangrene infection on my butt, and I had gangrene infection on my hand. And so there was a month of hospitalization. I was able to get the social workers and my family to work together to get me out of the Las Vegas hospital, and I was medically evac'd to California. And that was really my way out. That fact that I was able to get out of Las Vegas area. He was calling the hospital and seeing if I was still there and stuff like that. So I was really scared being there.
You know, most people, when they hear about this issue, and I get it, it's dark, it's tough. Most people want to help, but not everybody is in a critical position to make an impact. But you guys are.
Bad guys are always out there. They're always working, they're always looking. It's only right that good people do the same. You know, keep their eyes out for people to help, for people to save, for people to protect, to do one small thing, and that's make a call.
So I got out of the hospital in the beginning of August. I gave my statement in the middle of August, and then middle of September, he was picked up. And we didn't have trial until March of 2016.
The 20-year-old victim stood bravely before Judge Richard Scotti, describing horrific abuse by 30-year-old Robert Sharp III, who stood expressionless on the other side of the room.
I will never completely recover from the emotional damage.
She recounted how Sharp would beat her, turning up the stereo and laughing out loud to drown out her screams. While Robert Sharp's victim may never escape her memories of 8 weeks in the hands of a sadistic pimp, at least the life sentence means he'll never have the chance to hurt her again.
To call up a family and say, you know, your daughter that's been missing, she's in my office right now, she's alive, and she wants to come home. And that's an amazing feeling. It's an amazing gift. You provided a miracle for a family. But unless people get involved, that miracle doesn't happen.
I think it's beyond important to just be compassionate and caring and notice those little things that are going wrong and notice those little cues that most people don't notice. I needed somebody to really care. I needed somebody who had compassion and made me feel cared for, because I didn't have that, and most victims don't.
Each of us can be on the lookout. Each of us can be paying attention to these red flags and hopefully make a call that leads to saving a life.
Okay, thanks guys for watching that. You can go to the website it mentioned, bustersonthelookout.org or truckersagainsttrafficking.org if you want materials or want to learn more. And we're just going to finish up our collaboration section. First, we're going to talk about the local coordinating council. Local coordinating councils were established as forums to coordinate transportation efforts between these organizations, government agencies, nonprofits, private companies, citizens, and Utah Transit Authority. They serve as the decision makers of the 5310 funds for transparency and local involvement. There are 3 UZAs in the Utah Valley, and they also represent the 3 local coordinated councils. As a subrecipient, it is important for you to attend these local coordinated council meetings. You will get more points on your application if you attend all of them, or send someone in your place if you can't make it to take notes for you. Please become involved and encourage others to be involved. It is open to the public. The meetings are typically held every other month, and occasionally there is a summit in November. All subrecipients should attend and participate. And another big reason to participate is so that you can contribute to the plans, the local mobility plans of your county, and help us identify the needs and gaps in your community, so that we can better serve the areas that need funding. You can find specific meeting dates on our website, and I will show you the website and where to find that. Also, please look at our program management plan if you haven't before. I believe I sent it out, but you can always download a copy from our website, which I will show you as well. The PMP outlines UTA's policies and procedures for administering the funds, and it is approved by the FTA. So it's good to look through it just to understand what we do and what our policies are and be familiar with those. And then the other important document are the mobility plans, which the LCCs help develop and update. They identify transportation needs and strategies for those needs, and you used those in your application. So that's why it's important to be familiar with those, because your application needs to align with those strategies. And sometimes in Zoomgrants, there's a little box where announcements can be posted. So I'm going to try and post important dates, training opportunities, and other grants that I might see that you might be interested in. I will put on there. So when you log into your Zoomgrants to complete your reports and invoices, remember to check the announcement section to see if there's anything there that can help you. URSTA is another great resource for your agency. URSTA stands for Utah's Urban and Rural Specialized Transportation Association. They provide training and education for drivers and managers. They typically hold a conference in the fall and spring. Their website is currently under construction, but when it's up and running, they are planning on doing something in the spring. I'm not sure yet if that will be like an online thing or what they will do. But typically, you can also apply for scholarships if you want to send your drivers to a conference, and URSTA will pay for your registration fee and hotel accommodations to attend the conference. So don't forget about that. It's a great resource. Another great resource to you is the National Rural Transit Assistance Program. They have a website with tons of information that will help you. So let me pull that up so I can show you. Okay. So this is the National RTAP e-learning site. you can create a login account and it's free, and you can access training course videos and materials to train your drivers. And they have the Title VI video and the human trafficking video and all sorts of other training videos available. And then on their main website, let me just show you really quick. They also have toolkits, ADA toolkit, marketing, a transit manager's toolkit. This is very handy. And it walks you through maybe creating policies if you need to do that. This is a great help. They just have a ton of really great things that can help you. Okay, let me get back here. And then also, there are a lot of resources as a grants manager if you're interested. Maybe the National Grants Management Association is not for you if you're a small nonprofit, but if you're maybe with a larger agency or looking to learn more about dealing with federal grants specifically, NGMA is a great thing to join. They bring people from all over the United States together to keep up with the best practices of grant management. They can help you like do your what's it called, accounting practices. They can help with developing trainings, all sorts of things. And they also offer a certified grant management specialist training where you can study and take a test and become a certified grant manager. There are some other training resources if you're interested that I know about for maybe some that are more geared towards nonprofits. So if that's something you're interested in or trying to find more information about, send me an email. I have a huge list of resources that I can give you if you want to learn more about managing grants to better help your agency. Okay. And then I'll also show you our website. Our website is utahridelink.org, and that is the website for our department, Coordinated Mobility. And that is where you'll find all the information for this grant. And then I also have a YouTube channel that I briefly showed you where I'm going to try to make that better in 2021. I got procured some video editing software so I can actually make good videos. So that will come to me in 2021 and I can make those better. And then Clint also has a web page for Ride Pilot stuff, and I will show you that. So this is Clint's YouTube page for those of you who manage vehicles. So if you ever forget what you're doing in Ride Pilot, he's got some videos here to help you with that. And then, see what if I go back? And then this is my page. And hopefully next year I will add a lot more videos and have some stuff available for you to watch for trainings and teaching new employees. And then let's go. I can't see the top. There it is. Okay, this is our website, utahridelink.org. So this is our home page. And if you hover on the 5310 grant, the drop down will come. If you just click here, it's going to take you to the 5310 grant homepage where we have announcements and dates, and the program management plan can be found here. All of the county mobility plans that I was talking about, coordinated human services, transportation plans. Sorry, that's a long name, but they're all here. And Bear River does their own, but we keep that up to date so you can see that as well, because they do projects also. Okay, so if you want to find the resources, you have to hover and then go down and click on resources. This is where all our documents are located. Again, if you want to use some of our Title VI documents, we have, let's see, we have our Title VI complaint logs that you can use. And I believe those I think Spanish is included in that. I'll have to check. Site visit checklist, if you want to know what we look for during site visits. Complaint log samples. So if you want to learn more about how to take complaints and how UTA does it, you can like use our procedures Title VI checklist available for you, so you can make sure your Title VI is compliant. What else is here? Our policy that you can adopt the policy as long as you create your own LAP, which they discussed in the video. And this has instructions in it on creating your LAP, and then an example of a poster, and I have other examples if you need. Vehicle documents. These are forms specifically for vehicles. We have your accident forms that you can print and put in your vehicle. We recommend to have them on a clipboard with a pen so that if the driver gets in an accident, it's right there. What we look for in a vehicle inspection, and you can also use these forms to do your own inspections. Pre and post trip inspection templates you can use. And the checklist at delivery that we use to make sure your vehicle has everything, but we fill that out for you. Then you have the local coordinated council stuff. Christy posts all the meetings and information here. And then we have our other information, Ride Pilot, our trip planner, if you want to learn more about our driver voucher programs. Travel training. Travel training is a free service that we offer to people who need assistance learning how to use the public transportation system. So if you ever need anything regarding that, they have their phone number here, but also on our Contact Us page. Here are 2 travel trainers, Doraline and Jacob, and that's how you can contact them. And then Ryan Taylor, he is the head of Coordinated Mobility Management Department, and he is also on the, I think, the president of IRSTA. Christy Allen, she runs our local coordinated council stuff, and Clint, he does all of our Ride Pilot stuff. And then Holly and I, we work specifically with the 5310 grant, so our information is here if you need. And actually, this phone number is wrong, so I need to change that. But here's my email address. Jay is asking, does your website use a specific browser? No, but I've heard, Clint told me that if you're having trouble getting to it, there's like a weird error the first time. You have to do www.utahridelink.org, and then once you visit it the first time, it will like remember that. So try that and see if that works. If not, let me know and I can tell Clint because he designed the website and hopefully can fix that. Oh, it worked. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so we went over the importance of the local coordinated councils and encouraging other agencies to attend. These are also great to connect with other subrecipients and maybe collaborate on projects. Remember to look at the PMP and UZA plans that we talked about. Feel free to ask questions. You can email me and Holly at any time. Check the Zoomgrants announcements occasionally. And there's many resources available to you. If you need more resources, let me know. And reminder that the vehicle training is usually in the spring once vehicles have been ordered and we know when they're going to be delivered. And we are having an LCC comprehensive plan review meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. So if you did not get the invitation to that, email Christy if you want to attend. And we're going to take any last minute questions and attendance. So let me pull up the attendance sheet here. Okay. Whoops. How do I? Oh. Okay, WebEx. How do I? Oh, participants. Okay, I've allowed you to unmute yourself if you want to ask questions or discuss anything or tell me that you're here. This is a list of the people that were signed up. So I'm just going to look through it here. If you do not see your name, let me know.
Alec, just so you know, Matt Elston was in most of the training, but he had to leave